Welcome. I'm Radha Krishnaswamy, your host for Becoming Next You. Tune in for real stories that will inspire you for the career that truly fits you. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Andrew Burns for our show. Andrew Burns is an incredible father and an amazing leader, and whose journey spans across continents and whose experience will deeply resonate with global professionals like us. He rose into the ranks of Senior Vice President in the fintech space and then decided to become a coach and wants to champion the emotional well-being of all the working professionals, especially men. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Radha. I appreciate the introduction. It sounds amazing.
Before we go into your fascinating life, into the early childhood, I would like to begin with a question.
Sure.
If I were to ask your loved ones, the people who know you well, about what is Andrew's emotional blind spot,
Oh,
what would they say?
what? Well, I think if you were talking to my children, you'd probably get a different response from if you were talking to my wife or friends, but then that's what children are for. What is my emotional blind spot? Probably the inability to really judge where I am. Probably both emotionally, career-wise, to have some sense of relativity to that. And the journey that I've had with myself, it's always difficult to just take a moment, stop, and go, where actually am I? Relative to where I want to be, where I've been, and then have a sense of accomplishment, a sense of satisfaction, a sense of fulfillment. I think that's probably what they would say.
What they would say. Okay. That's an awareness to have already. You have a fascinating story of being raised in military family, growing up in boarding school in the 70s and 80s, and moving around in Berlin and many other cities. What was it like to grow up in that era in a military, environment?
Yeah, I mean, so my father was quite senior in the Air Force, responsible for intelligence operations. So we found ourselves posted in Berlin in the mid-'80s. And I was probably around 9-10 years old. We were there for 3 or 4 years. So I was very conscious of what was happening. It was the center of the Cold War at the time. And for me, with all these things, when you reflect, at the time, it felt normal. It didn't feel strange or different. It felt like, of course, this is my upbringing. But reflecting back and talking with people, they go, "What?" Because we lived in a house that was bugged by the KGB or the Stasi police, the East German police controlled by the KGB. We were invited by the Russians to go across into East Germany when nobody else was allowed to go into East Germany. So we had special Russian passes, and my dad would have to put on his uniform, and we would go across the Glienicke Bridge, which is where the film, the Spy Swap film with quite a few good actors in it, The Bridge of Spies. That's where all of the spy swaps were done. We had to go across that and be surrounded by people with machine guns until we handed over our special Russian passes. So we, as a young teenager, I had, so I was 9 or 10 when we moved there. And we moved back when I was about 13, I think, 13 or 14. So the telephone was bugged at home, so you'd call up friends and say, "Hey, I'll meet you by the bridge. I've got something to tell you." And there would be a couple standing there who were obviously the Stasi pretending to be a couple because they wanted to listen to what I had to say. So we were always listened to, followed. It was a typical sort of spy operation that the Stasi police had files on absolutely everybody of interest. So there is a file out there with my name on it.
With your name on it.
Yeah.
Wow. Describe the feeling when you're going through this kind of, a very highly secret missions and, being bugged, being listened as a child. What was the feeling that you were going through?
Yeah, I mean, relative to me, I didn't really know the whole background to it. I knew it was exciting. I knew there was consequences for things, especially when you would hear about people had been killed trying to escape. And that was really, okay, we're entering into a place that is quite scary from a point of view of being able to get out of. And when you went over the wall into East Germany, it was such a depressing place at the time. It was there were still bullet holes in the walls from the Second World War. They hadn't fixed it. They burnt this brown coal that made everything very misty and quite a scary place. People didn't look at each other. They always looked down. There was virtually nothing in the shops. Okay. So a very depressing sort of place. So I was very conscious of a different world. Not so much of, I guess, the reasons behind that.
Right.
Nor the potential danger that my father was in. And he used to disappear for a couple of weeks and we'd never know where he went. But
so when you say we, is it you were the only child? Or
myself and my brother.
Your brother, okay.
And my mother.
So you two were in it together?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So you had the shared experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so he would disappear on operations to go and spy on what the Russians were doing in East Germany. And then he would suddenly turn up again.
And this was happening when you were also in the boarding school?
Yes. So I went to boarding school when I was 7 years old, which boarding school, for those who don't know what it is where you go to school and you stay there. So you sleep in the school for the full term, however many months, 3 months, etc. And it was really certainly for military people, if they're posted abroad, they could send their children to have an education in Britain that was consistent, and so they didn't have to be sent to different foreign schools all the time and have disruption. So that was the concept.
So you stayed away from your parents?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how often did you see them?
Not that often, because when they were living abroad, it was quite hard to go and see them, because you could only have an occasional weekend away, which weekend would be from about lunchtime on a Saturday to early evening on a Sunday. So it really wasn't worthwhile to go and fly across to Germany and then back again for that weekend. So maybe once, half term was always about a week. So I'd go and have half term at home. Any other weekends that I chose to go, which was maybe about two weekends in the full 3 months, I go and stay with friends or my aunt and uncle.
Okay. And you said you chose to go, so you can also stay back in the boarding school.
Well, you had to stay back.
Okay.
But you were given this sort of rather bizarre point system where you had 7 points for the full term. And if you wanted to take a weekend, that was 2 points. Okay. If you wanted to take a Sunday off, that was 1 point. So you had to strategically think about,
wow,
what's the best time? Did I really need to go home? Okay, I need a weekend away. Okay. So it was your choice in that sense. But there were also punishments that would take away points. If you'd been particularly bad, did something egregious, then okay, you don't have as many points again. So you had to be very careful and delicate at how you used them.
Wow. And this was all in the age of 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange one, because again, at the time, 7 years old, you don't really think about these things. But then when I became a father and my kids the eldest got to 7 years old, then I was like, wow, okay, she's tiny. She's so vulnerable. And then it kind of hit me. I was really thinking that's quite from a parental point of view, that's quite a thing to do. And so I really started sort of questioning what was the trigger for that, for me to be sent away to boarding school, which sounds quite dramatic, but essentially that's what it was. And I realized through conversations that this was really the best education that you could get. My father never really thought that he would leave me any money. So he said, I'm going to give you the best education I can give you. And what you do with that is your life.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, I'm quite grateful. However, 7 was too young.
Too young.
It really was. You're at that age very vulnerable. You're needing the love, structure, safety of your parents, and you go into an institution which really doesn't provide that.
So at the age of 7, you're already rationalizing about your emotions, because the point system is basically you deciding how to spend your points to visit your parents, or, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And also in the all male environment in
Correct.
the boarding school, I guess that it's all male, and you have to also navigate that at the age of 7. How do you now see your emotional landscape at that age?
Yeah, I think I learned very quickly that certain emotions were a dangerous thing to allow freedom to. So that was the initial thought, was, okay, I feel these, but I'm not going to let it out. That quickly moved into, I shouldn't really be feeling these, because it's very hard to contain an emotion, a strong emotion, especially when you're that age. And so it will come out. And if it comes out, then you become a target, because that's a sign of weakness in that sort of environment. So, for example, a strong feeling was homesickness.
Right.
I really want to see my parents. And that would bring a huge feeling of grief and tears. But if you were seen to be homesick, then you're weak. And so you'd get picked on, bullied. And so you really had to push that down. You were strong. I'm able to cope with this. I'm able to be fine in this environment. I'm enjoying this.
Did you develop this coping mechanism after you went through that strong, intense emotion? Or was it simply learning from the environment?
I think it was learning from the environment. I think you adapted. I became very good at reading the room and learning to understand what's behind people's actions. I really started to see people's emotions, even though they were very subtle. The body always gives out readings. And that was sort of my feedback loop as to, I can do better. I can hold back. I notice these things. And so it became a kind of performance in a way.
Yeah.
And that way it enabled me to navigate political situations. It enabled me to see people, what's behind what they're saying, what they're doing. And it just became kind of intrinsic into the way I navigated life. And that was a great survival mechanism. And that along with sport, I loved sport. So that helped me. I think if I think about these things in a sort of somatic way, and the body takes a lot of emotion, which is a lesson I learned later on in life more consciously. But the sport allowed me to move and allow all of that restraint out. So I tried any sport I could get my hands on.
Okay. So you found grounding in sports, and you learned to perform and manage your emotions in this all-male environment very early on in your childhood. Wow, that's amazing. Now, let's go a little bit into when Andrew leaves the boarding school. Yeah. So this was around, I think, age 18. 18, yeah. So
sounds like a prison sentence.
But now Andrew is independent. And I understand that you chose China.
Yeah, I wanted to get away from everything I knew. I wanted to go on an adventure. I really just wanted a breakout. I think a lot of people, teenagers, feel like this when they leave school that they've been in for 12 years, however long. So I chose a place that I'd never even heard of, which was called Malaysia.
Malaysia. Okay.
And I flew across, and I managed to get a spot in a school, and I was teaching English.
This was in 90s.
Yeah, this was in 1992, showing my age. And it was, I'd never been to Asia. Like I said, I'd never heard of this country, but it was such an amazing experience right from the start. But then I quickly learnt to navigate that culture, which was quite westernized. It was a former British colony. And so there were a lot of familiar things there. And I thought, I want more adventure. I'd been bitten by that bug, the travel bug. I want to learn more about cultures that I have absolutely no idea about. And so I really thought China's got to be the place.
Where do you think it came from to experience cultures?
I think being conscious of living in a different culture when I grew up. And I remember my parents telling me that when I was a very young child, I was born in the UK, but we moved to Germany as the first posting when I was 6 months old. So becoming conscious of myself and memories. I thought this was my home. And then they said, we're moving back to the UK. And my reaction was, it's a big hole in the ground. I'm terrified of going back to the UK because all my friends had said, we're moving back to the UK, and I never saw them again. So the context of a child, when you never see someone again, they must have died. And so all of these kids, and so then I became conscious that actually Germany wasn't the culture I was from. The UK was the culture I'm from, but I'm not familiar with it. And so you have a culture shock in your own culture. And I love that feeling of going somewhere and really not knowing how to behave. Because then you've got to tune in really quickly to people. And it gets down to just a human essence. Speaking to people, being vulnerable, not just trying to embed your own culture into somebody else's, because you're going to make mistakes. You're never going to survive that way. So go into learning mode, go into vulnerable mode, and then you'll be able to get the most out of it. And that was really, that kind of led me on to then going, right, I want to go to China, because this is the internet was around, but pre-devices that allowed you to really access stuff. So there was no Google Translate. Everything was in Chinese characters. Just trying to get on the first train was just terrifying. There were crowds and crowds of people, signs, announcements. I couldn't even read the signs. It was just a spectacular event at 9 o'clock at night at the Guangzhou train station. And that was really okay. I'm really learning here. I'm terrified. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm learning.
You never regretted your decision?
No, never. No.
Wow.
No, there's so much there, and that's the sort of motto of my life, I guess, is discomfort provides growth. So you have to go into discomfort. If you're feeling comfortable, you're not going to grow.
Is this a motto from boarding school that you got, that it's discomfort and growth?
I don't think I would have applied that at the time. I think it was probably get the hell out of here as growth. But no, I think if I reflect on it, there are always different ways of seeing things. So you can get stuck in the comfort of feeling like you understand and experience. But actually I think a lot of times if that experience was a negative one, then that comfort puts you into being a victim. And you are controlled by that. So turning it around and seeing it in a different perspective, and seeing it as this is actually a benefit, gives you a bit of a visceral response. And I think that discomfort of the emotion coming through, wait a minute, I had a terrible time. It was really hard. I'm allowed to say that this was difficult. Okay, but you're going to get stuck in being a victim. So if you see it in a different way, there's so much potential and growth that you can then take from that. And it's so liberating once you get past that control and emotional control.
Definitely, when you are put in a new environment, you access different parts of you which you have never accessed. I think that's a great point. You were in Malaysia, and then how did you end up in China?
Yeah, well, I read a book called Riding the Iron Rooster by Paul Thoreau, which was just a fantastic journey that he took probably a decade or so before my time, where he'd deliberately ridden on all the trains going through China. And a lot of them were steam trains at the time, so they took a huge amount of time, so 3 or 4 days to go. And it just sounded phenomenal, just an amazing trip. So I thought, that's what I want to go and do. I think China is the place to go because I know nothing about China. Back in the early 90s, it was not the country it is today, by far. I mean, when I got to Beijing, it was all bicycles and there were a few cars and some buses. Certainly not all the buildings and all the rest there is these days. So it was a place that just felt right to go to for a really good adventure. And just for a brief outline, follow this book. So I started riding the trains. So that first train journey from Guangzhou to Beijing, which I think took 3 days or something crazy. And then everything changed in Beijing because I stayed in a dormitory and met some people who said, you need to go to the Xinjiang province. It's absolutely spectacular. So the Western province, it's where the Silk Road went through originally. And they said there's this town called Kashgar near the Kazakhstan border, or Kashmiri border rather. And if you get there at the right time, all the hill tribe leaders come down from the hills and sell their wares in the town. And it's biblical. It's incredible. There's no modern technology or anything. So that was really where I wanted to go. And so I made my way across, taking a 3-day bus journey across the desert, which in itself was fairly epic. It was not supposed to be 3 days. It was supposed to be 2, but it breaks down in the middle of the desert and they decide to take the whole engine out, which I'm saying, I don't think sand and engine parts go well together. So are you sure that's the right thing to do in whatever language I could come up with? But we made it. It was, had some interesting experiences with the people there who were absolutely beautiful people. The locals, the Uyghurs, the Muslim population. And it was just a stunning experience of something so different at that age, and the kindness of people, the terrifying experience of authority, because I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I had to bribe certain people to be in the region because it was illegal for me to be there. That was the one proviso that this guy said, it's a great place to go, but it's not allowed.
It's not allowed. Wow.
Being very teenager-ish, I was like, oh, that's fine, not a problem.
Wow.
Until the moment you're taken off the bus by the police.
Were you?
Yes,
Oh,
yes. I was
okay.
on the outskirts of a place called Urumqi. And it had been a very long, different bus journey. And I was the only foreigner. And the bus stopped and the police came on and asked for everybody's identification. And obviously I stuck out like a sore thumb. So they took me out of the bus. And the bus driver kind of took pity on me and was saying, oh, come on, it's okay, it's fine. And then he gave me a sort of a look, which I think was kind of, if you're going to do it now.
Wow.
So I just sort of opened up my wallet and I was like, oh, did I forget to pay the stamp duty or whatever it was?
Amazing. I'm just thinking like how fascinating it is that you lived in Berlin, you lived in UK, you were in a boarding school, and now you're navigating the landscape in China, and you have adapted to all these environments, and you're able to communicate to a Chinese bus driver who doesn't speak your language and you're immediately responding to that environment. Who are you and what were you actually trying to accomplish in being in China?
Well, I think, again, I was trying to accomplish, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I think it was an itch to discover myself, which had been trapped and hidden deliberately by myself. And that's what the adventure was about, really going into a place where I could prove to myself who I was. I was resilient. I was able to do this. I was able to communicate, as you say, with people who didn't speak my language. And really have something that would be almost like a badge of honor, I think, at that age. Because the experiences I'd had relative to that one, certainly in Berlin, I think that probably set me up to be aware of what my father had achieved and was doing at that time and the adventures he was having. And I don't think I saw boarding school as an adventure. Probably, if I reflect now, it was definitely an adventure. But I wanted something for myself.
Wow.
I wanted that badge of honor and say, oh yeah, I've been there. I've done this. I've done that. But deep down, really to kind of prove to myself that, yeah, I can do this.
Okay. Excellent. I also wanted to touch upon a very pivotal moment where you really were also thinking, okay, I'm discovering myself in China, but something else happened where you actually realized maybe I wasn't yet fully authentic.
Yeah, I think, so that was as I was leaving China. I'd really run out of money. And it was very difficult back then in China to get money out because there were two currencies, one for the local people and one for foreigners, called FEC. And it was a whole big performance to get money from a bank because the exchange rate was different and they were just making money out of foreigners. And so the train coming back to Guangzhou was a little bit delayed. It was late. I wasn't going to be able to make it to the bank. And I really had to sleep on the streets. I had no money and I couldn't afford the exit visa to get back into Hong Kong.
You need an exit visa?
Yeah.
Okay.
To get back into Hong Kong. And so I was chatting with this guy with his son who spoke some English. And that was the lovely thing about the Chinese people. If they were learning English, they really wanted to practice. So they would surround you and just try and talk. But we got into this quite good conversation. And I think he was also wanting to help his son see a different culture, experience different things, because they really couldn't travel back then. So he said, what are you going to do? And I explained my situation. And he, without thinking, just took out his wallet and gave me the money. And I was so touched by this. And I said, this is too much. He said, no, there will be times in your life where people will be in a similar situation as you are right now, and you'll be able to help them.
How much is the money?
So that allowed me to cross into Hong Kong that evening. And that first step back into Hong Kong really I was so culture shocked because I'd spent nearly 2 months in China where there was a lot of poverty that I saw back then. 1 million people lived in caves. I would go on trains where it would slow down at certain sections and the women were trying to sell their babies because there was a law you could only have one baby. Oh. So it was quite devastating, the poverty. And then to have such an experience with people and really get to relate to them and then go across within half an hour into this opulence of Hong Kong. I was so culture shocked.
Wow.
And then immediately afterwards, I found out that somebody who had quite a lot of influence on my life when I was at school, my history teacher, had been killed in a car crash.
Wow.
So all of these emotions just suddenly hit of just, wow. And I really started to feel these emotions having come from connecting with people in a culture that I just had no idea about. I didn't speak the language. It was hard to communicate, but we had such a great connection to this place of opulence and almost like waste And then this life had gone that was an influence on me. All of this came together and just impacted me at that point.
And you're still alone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for a child who in the boarding school who was always told to suppress their emotions, is now having an emotional roller coaster ride in China, Hong Kong, also some news of someone whom you really love.
Yeah.
Tell us about Andrew in Hong Kong right now. What was going on and what did you discover?
Oh, well, I was lost. Everything that I thought I understood really kind of disappeared. I didn't know how to feel these emotions. I looked for an exit.
Exit, as in?
Just to get out, go back to familiarity. So I ended up going back to Malaysia for a little bit and then back to the UK. But if I reflect on that time, if I'm in Hong Kong now, it was fairly devastating. I really didn't know how to reconcile all of the experience I just had with where I was now and my new perception of it, having had that opening emotionally, culturally, of the 2 months previous. And coming back to a place where I really wasn't there for that long and I hadn't been away for that long, and suddenly it was such a different place. And then just the real impact of somebody who was so influential in my school life dying so unexpectedly. And I think that person was probably the first close death I'd had in my life at that time. That all just hit. And I didn't know where to go.
I'm curious that you didn't feel like that you want to go back home and process this with your parents, or was that not the environment?
It wasn't processing it with my parents. I think it was just a sense of being awash at sea. And when you have that emotion, you start to feel like you're drowning. And I didn't know then what I know now, which is it's okay to sit with that. It's okay to give it space. You're not going to drown. I was very much into the action after the emotion. And so the action I felt at that time was move. Get out. And maybe that was going back to the boarding school days of suppress, sports, survive.
And that's very common that I've understood from my own male friends, that when they tend to feel some emotions, they tend to go into sports. So that's very common that I'm hearing that. And this is something that I think is coming up time and again. And I think the work of a coach is where we see there is so much of power in it. And before we get there, I'm feeling tempted to go to the coach. Let's go to the place you were. So you started to work after that, you went to work in Motorola.
Correct.
And then you also ended up in a very exciting startup space and really rose in ranks there. Tell us a little bit more about that, and then let's go into the coach.
Yeah, so I graduated from university and got a position in Motorola as a sort of temporary position for 3 months in the finance or treasury department, which was quite exciting for me at that time because they were doing foreign exchange trading, really dealing with all the money. So I thought, this is a good place to start. And I got stuck in. We liked each other. I loved the work environment in terms of there was so much that could be done. And I realized then I loved change and improving things and solving problems. But I quickly hit a brick wall. Motorola back in those days was 150,000 people. It was a $40 billion company. But it was really culturally stemming from a family-run background. It was a public company, but it was the CEO at the time, Chris Galvin, was a great-grandson or grandson of the founder.
Right.
So he tried to still run it as a family. And so I would make all these suggestions about improvements, and it would be, yeah, that's a great idea, but we're not going to do it. No reason why. And I became pretty frustrated pretty quickly. So I was given a great opportunity that we'd been implementing this financial software. And it hadn't gone very well. But the person that had been parachuted in from the company to implement it, we just clicked. And we kept in touch. And he called me one day asking for a reference for someone else he was looking to hire because I knew them. And he said, how's it going? And I said, well, it's not particularly good. And he said, look, if you ever want a job, let me know. And since then, he'd moved to a different company, which was more of a startup. There were about 15 people in the company. And I joined. And it was unbelievably liberating. Speaking with people who could make decisions, the CEO, all of the board.
What's the size of the company?
It was about 15 people.
Okay.
And
is this CTFO?
No. This was a company called Richmond Software.
Okay.
Which really allowed me to get into that world and understand that that's what I loved. I loved the speed of it, the influence, the creativity, the strategic thought process, getting out, meeting the customers. And I'd had some experience with that world as well, so I could speak their language. And then private equity discovered that sector, and I went through about 3 or 4 different acquisitions, various different experiences in the companies, until one day I got a call from a recruiter. I wasn't looking to move. My wife actually told me to answer the phone because I was another recruiter. And it was this company, C2FO, which was in a slightly different area, but still financial technology. It was about 40 people in Kansas City looking to internationalize the business. And so that was my journey for the next 10 years after that. Really opening up companies, and this particular company, to the international environment in Europe. So really starting from scratch. There was a product, but starting from scratch. And I realized that whole journey with financial technology was actually very similar to my urge to go to cultures and see how you react without knowing how you're going to react. I was terrified joining that company. But it was about becoming an entrepreneur without being an entrepreneur.
Right.
I was still being safe. I didn't have the guts to actually set up my own company. So this was a great way to do that. And so that journey finished round about this time last year.
Okay. What happened?
Well, I'd gone through a burnout in 2019. I'd learned to navigate it again. I'd finally got help. But I started to recognize it was coming back again. And it was really, for the last 3 years, it was hard graft. And I wasn't getting the satisfaction. And I realized in myself there was no fulfillment. And so I'd started thinking, how am I going to get out of this? What am I going to do? And I felt pretty powerless with it. Because the money was good. There was still a lot of potential. The company was struggling a bit, but we could all see that if certain things happened, we'd turn a corner. But I just didn't have the energy. Getting out of bed every day was really hard. And I thought, I'm never going to make it to the end of the year.
So describe the feeling for people who are listening, especially because you have been in this company for 10 years and you had immense energy to, move this company from 40 people to how many?
It got to 1,000.
1,000 people. Yeah. And now, 10 years fast forward, you are not having the energy to get up from the bed. So what happened? And how would somebody recognize this, that they are that they are experiencing burnout?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that you can have success, but not the energy with the success. When you have success, you feel elated, you feel great, And when that starts to wane, and you start to go, I'm really not feeling this.
You're not feeling the energy with the
You're not
success.
feeling the energy. You're not feeling the positivity. Then you start to realize that you're not fulfilled. There's no meaning in what you're doing. And you tread water. And you go, okay, I'm just going to keep going because this will change. It'll be all right. I'll get into it. I'll drive. I'll push through. And especially with men, I think that's just push through. It's almost, we go to the competitive side of things, and we go to that period of time on the sports field. Keep going. Push through. You'll get there.
Yeah.
You'll win. And that's very dangerous, because just pushing through, you can't.
Yeah.
And I realized the analogy I use for myself is, those games you have where you have a big elastic band and it's pinned to a wall, and they pin it to you, and you're told, run as hard as you can away from the wall. And you feel like you're going, and then it just, you can't.
You can't.
The power of the elastic band pulls you back. And that's exactly what happens with this, is if you don't confront it, that feeling of just being drained, nothing has meaning, nothing has energy, and you're just treading water or starting even to sink, that's the sign of a burnout. And you cannot be busy. It's not about being busy. It's about the lack of energy.
Yeah.
And that can take you to places which you will never get the energy back.
So now we are here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now Andrew is a coactive coach.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us why you chose to become a coactive coach.
Well, I think, as you said earlier, I've been a coach since I was very young. I didn't realize that, but I got a lot of satisfaction out of inquiry and talking with people, and I could see people. I could see what was going on because of my boarding school experience, and my wife calls it a superpower. I just call it being present. You feel what's going on behind the surface. And that's always intrigued me. And I've learned to temper it a little bit because it can be quite intrusive.
Yes.
And so just trying to ask questions to allow people to see that themselves. And I'd realized through this coactive coaching how to do that and the power of asking questions, powerful questions. Whereas before I'd not really comprehended that. And I'd gone a little bit into solution mode, saying, I think you should do this.
That's mentoring.
Mentoring, right? Yeah, consulting, mentoring. And so the coactive model of coaching really was so powerful. And even in the early days where we had to do coaching with a person, a client, feeling like I was definitely in the conscious incompetence stage, terrified of it. But the reaction that people had in just intuitively asking questions was just unbelievable. And so that really got my energy back. And I realized, yeah, that's a path I want to take. I want to explore more of that. And I want to do it particularly for people, for men who've been in that situation that I've been in, or who are in that situation that I've been in, who are successful. Everybody thinks they're successful. And yet they're just dying inside. And asking simple questions and helping them get some reframe, refocus, self-discovery from the power of questions. And also tapping into their bodies.
Yeah.
That's a strong one.
It's amazing, Andrew. What would you want to leave your audience with, if you have to say, from your journey and what you have understood so far? What would you say them to listen to?
Well, I think the thing that moved it for me, because there's that awful feeling of being stuck. So you can feel like you're burning out, but you have no idea what you want to do. And the thing that shifted it for me was a quote, and I need to look it up who said this, but it was, we vastly overestimate the amount we can achieve in a year. And we vastly underestimate the amount we can achieve in 3.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a way to go, I don't have to have all the answers now. I don't have to go, okay, I'm going to leave this job and join this and do that and right now. I can just take a step in a direction that feels good. And wherever that leads, I'll be in a completely different place in 3 years. And that doesn't mean I have to give up my job now. I can just try things out and regain that energy because it's still there. People feel like they don't have the energy, they don't feel fulfilled, and they're just stuck in that place. But you take one step into something that feels good, it's immediately there. And that's just a small step. So have a look around, tap back into, I'll try it, just see what that is. And that's where you can end up.
That's a great place to leave this, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to
been
hear
fun.
your story from military to Berlin to China, and now here in Amsterdam. It's been a truly honor. Thank you
Appreciate
for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.